Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. Each week, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from women entrepreneurs who transformed their prestige prisons into daring entrepreneurial success stories. Now, here is your host, Lulu Minns.
Welcome to episode 31 of She Rebel Radio, Why Strategy Over Identity is Futile. Welcome. It is She Rebel Friday and an honour to have you here as always. And let me say straight off the bat, this episode is for you. If you've tried all the strategies, the business strategies that are out there and they have just not worked for you and are still not working for you. Secondly, if you're overwhelmed by all the strategies that are out there and you just don't know where to start, then this is also for you. And thirdly, if you're just fed up with the same old, nail your niche, find your ideal client stuff, then this is also for you. Now, I say strategy over identity is futile. It is pointless because it's quite often the place where you might start, because I know as women coming from prestigious positions, you like a bit of strategy, ladies. Of course you do, because it's a plan of action in order to achieve an outcome or an end goal. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. You have achieved a lot already. You like a plan of action and all of that. So you go straight in with the strategy. You probably sat there with, a business idea and sat up all night writing a business plan and all of that kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean anything. Strategy doesn't mean anything when you're creating a business of significance unless you've done the work to fill the gap with identity. Now, if you are new to She Rebel Radio, then stay tuned. I'm just going to recommend a few more episodes to you that are follow-on from this. And if you've an avid listener and you've been listening for a while, I'm just going to give you a quick summary. And, they're episodes 23, 25, 27 and 29, because you may know my pattern now on She Rebel Radio. I tend to have a guest, do a solo show, guest, solo show. And, episodes 23 to 25 were really about why you shouldn't retain women in prestigious positions and what to expect and when to leave your prestigious position. So we really spent those two episodes looking at, what it means to be in a prestigious position. And what came up with that is, this need, this identity loss, this period of loss. And then the last two solo shows, 27 and 29, we've looked at the internal. So we've looked at dialing up your intuition and also taking care of your emotional house. And this episode is kind of a combination of those, but also a starting point of where we're going to really move into more around the business strategies, of how to move forward with creating your business of significance. So all of that is coming to you. And we're going to kick off with today's episode, number 31, Why Strategy Over Identity is Futile. And bearing in mind what I've said there in terms of, nailing your niche, finding your ideal client, who is your ideal client, how can you possibly know any of that, of who they are, if you haven't yet done the work to work out who you are? And I'm going to share with you in today's episode 2 critical pieces of my identity within my business and how they kind of became uncovered. I'm going to share with you, some degree of transitional stress that we experience when we come out of a prestigious position and into our business of significance, and what that can mean for strategy, and why it is that reconnecting with your inner essence, with your deeper self, is really critical to act as a filter for the decisions that you are making in respect of the strategy that can move you and your business of significance forward. So this is going to be a good episode. They're all good, right? But this is going to be a good one. So the two critical pieces for my business identity, and, you know, I think often as well, business of significance really does, you know, it connects with who you are as a person, that there's no longer this real separation out of the professional self and the personal self. And social media and, you know, how business is moving forward is really encouraging businesses to do that. So if you start to do this, you're ahead of the game. And the real significant shift for me is the difference between Lulu and Louise. And it's a question, actually. I was doing a breakout strategy day with a client, and I'm asked this question a lot: is your real name Lulu or is it Louise? And the simple answer to that is it's both. It is Louise on my birth certificate, it's Lulu on my passport. And I have never been called Louise until I was in the legal profession. I was Lulu at school. My parents always called me Lulu, and my mum put Louise on my birth certificate because I might want to become a professional person one day. And that's exactly what happened. And it suited me in the legal profession. So whilst I started my legal studies after my initial degree in criminology and sociology, I was like, I'm going to use the name Louise. So I'm registered by the Law Society as Louise, etc., etc. And what I did was create a real professional persona around Louise and who I was in that field. And that served me. I was successful. And it also didn't serve me. I think for women and you know, for everyone in prestigious positions, we've very much been encouraged to create a very professional persona and leave our badly behaved selves elsewhere. And I don't know if you've seen any of The Crown. It's very interesting in terms of Elizabeth, and it's not all accurate or based on historical fact, far from it. But it depicts very well how she kind of was very encouraged to strip herself of an identity. And, you know, that's the most prestigious position that there was. Whether it is now is another matter. But, you know, we also see Prince Harry giving up his prestigious position and, you know, all of that because of the knock on. I can't speak for his reasons, but that it can take in terms of, you know, intrusiveness is one thing, but also on who you are supposed to be to others. And historically, the business world has very much created the need for that. But actually, you know, with social media and all sorts of strategies and marketing tools that you can use, and the fact that everybody in the world is your potential competition, there is a real encouragement to step into authenticity and your real identity so you can stand out and be heard, you know, above the noise of who you really are. So on top of that, as women in the professional field of a business world that was designed by men for men, you know, we can create those personas as a certain degree of protection and armor of how we think we're supposed to be in those traditional, prestigious, and quite often patriarchal systems and structures. So Louise served me very well. And when I started my first business, I still use Louise in the dating industry. I thought, you know, that's my professional self, my personal self is Lulu. But actually, Louise gradually died an ego death and Lulu came to the forefront, which is my much more playful, much more creative, much more rebel-hearted side of me, much more feminine, much more free side of me, really started to take a lead. And I remember noticing this when I was doing some pre-recorded videos. It was even before Facebook Lives, that I really had to bring more of me. Whilst I was always pretty good at presenting, I hope that I'd been trained to do that, I really needed to strip back the professional self and be more me. So Lulu really came to the forefront, and that's been a big part in my identity process of, you know, really grounding myself in that and who I am at the core. And the second part of that is the rebel. And I have the Rebel Heart Club Mastermind, which is my successful mastermind program that I've sold every single year. And then the She Rebel grew on the back of that, the community, and then the She Rebel radio podcast that you're listening to right now. But I realised, and doing some quite deep with my coach around a year ago, that again, I was hiding a little bit from the rebel part of me, but it actually ran through everything that I do, and from a very young age. You know, even as simple as Robin Hood was my favourite film. Who's That Girl with Madonna as well? I don't know if you've seen that one. And, the real rebel is the heart of both of those films. And, I chose a career of, representing people that were in opposition or in trouble with the state, to say the least. And I also realised I'd been rejected quite a few times for being the rebel and not being conventional in some ways, and including by the legal profession. So there was a kind of reluctance to really step into that in some ways. And as a result of that, and branding my business back in 2017, the kind of rebel part of me had been wiped out and a bit blanded out, to be honest. And my first logo was kind of like a Mexican skull with the flowers. As you know, I've just come back from Mexico. I'm going to be spending more time in South America this year. So keep a note on that. I will share more about that very soon. That was kind of wiped out, but it was actually very important to my brand. So they're two pillars, very important pillars of my identity. And any strategy I use really goes back strongly to those two pillars. And what happens is, and I've talked about this on a past episode of what to expect, I think that is episode 25, when you leave a prestigious position, is this loss of identity. And when I was researching for this episode, there was a guy called Steve Rose who's got a PhD on transitional stress for veterans when they leave the military. And I was looking at that and I found it really interesting because some of it resonated. And I certainly know, representing people, who are released from prison, this transitional stress is very present. I did a lot of parole boards for lifers and things like that, and actually this kind of dysfunctioning or not being able to function fully in normal society was very much present. And whilst that's not the same for us women leaving prestigious positions, what it is important to recognise is that there can be a degree of transitional stress when you're transitioning out of prestigious position that becomes an all-consuming identity into your business of significance. And Steve Rose highlights for veterans leaving the military, there's a loss of structure. That resonated with me. And I know clients that have spoken to me of this, suddenly I haven't got this strict regime and structure anymore. Like, what do I do with all this time? There's this loss of sense of service. And I know as a woman in a prestigious position, you have served, like to be successful, you have taken that sense of service very, very to heart and very strongly. So again, when you lose that, and yes, you can direct that energy into your business, but initially there's this loss of this position, which is identity, structure, loss of service, which can result into feeling quite lost as to who you are without all of that stuff. And when I left the legal profession, or before even, I remember saying, I don't know who I am outside of this world. And I felt quite institutionalized, which is what the military is, it's what prisons are, and it's what a lot of corporations are. And there's transitional stress when you come out of that. Couple that with the bombardment of social media and marketing strategies that there are, equals firstly investing in the wrong thing at the wrong time, because it's not that these strategies and things are wrong, but it can be at the wrong time because you haven't done the underpinning work. And therefore it's a waste of money if you're investing, thousands, hundreds on all the strategy without doing this. It's wasted. And secondly, so it's either that investing in the wrong thing, or secondly, it's feeling so overwhelmed by all the stuff you don't even know where to start. And I know that they will resonate with you. You've either maybe spent on the wrong thing, or you've just felt totally overwhelmed that you're kind of in action. It's frozen the action that needs to happen. So what can we learn from this? What can we learn? Firstly, that if you've been in a prestigious position for 10 or 20 years, it's going to take some real unlearning of conventional rules and who you think you are to really reconnect with who you really are. And, stepping out of the shadow of someone else's agenda, someone else's passion, someone else's purpose, to reconnect with yours. And it's so critical that you do that work. Without that, what we get is a homogenization of industries. So the coaching industry, the yoga industry, two that I follow and that I, resonate with in some respects and really not in others, is that much of it all looks, feels and tastes the same, and it's bland because it's sucked out identity. And now more than ever, when I started my first online business properly in 2015, but playing around with the idea in 2014, you could kind of get away with it a bit. But now there's so many people doing it. The blander you are, the harder it's going to be with your strategy without doing this work of who you really are outside of that prestigious position. Quite often as well, what I see happen is, joining forces with a business partner who's also in the same place as you, leaving their prestigious position, quite often through a toxic situation. I quite often say a feminine initiation, that something bad might have happened, toxic work situation, redundancy, death, something. And then if there's two of you, then you're both trying to work out who you are and run a business at the same time and work out the business identity and all the and it just equals a bit of a mess. It equals a bit of a mess. And then you get someone coming in who doesn't understand all of that stuff that's going on, and you get an homogenization and just blanding it all out, making it might look pretty, it might look professional, but there's no real depth of meaning underneath any of it. So you need to identify you and your inner essence at quite a deep level. And you need to reconnect with that part of you and build your business of significance from that space. Because trust me, when you do that, it will act as a filter for all the decisions that you are making about your strategy and really help you to nail it properly and do it from a really authentic space, which there's no room in the marketplace now for people not being able to do that. So I would love to help you with this. And if you want to go deeper with this conversation, then do book a connection call with me and we can talk about a breakout strategy day where we can put in those foundational pieces for you and your business. And remember that strategy, ladies, over identity is futile, and you need to get down with the program in terms of your identity before and certainly alongside the strategy parts of your business. It's amazing to share with you on She Rebel Radio as always. I'm super excited to reconnect with you next week and our guest expert on She Rebel Radio. Have an amazing weekend and I will speak to you really soon.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced and hosted by women's advocate and coach Lulu Minns. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. You can find Lulu Minns on Facebook and LinkedIn at Lulu Minns and on Instagram at LuluMinns_biz. Until next week, keep rebelling against the rules and designing success your way.